I can see why people kind of associate it so closely with just like outbound prospecting. That really wasn't the point of the book in a lot of ways.
Welcome back to the B2B Playbook, where we believe that great go-to-market is built on people, not platforms. Now, few systems have shaped modern B2B more than Cold Calling 2.0, which became the business Bible, Predictable Revenue. When Aaron Ross published it over a decade ago, it gave sales teams a language and a structure, showing that revenue could be made repeatable, not just random. And it sparked a generation of SDRs, outbound teams, and leaders who finally had a playbook for growth. For those that deeply understood the work of predictable revenue, they saw with absolute clarity what was intended. But over time, the market's perception mislabeled, misdiagnosed, and misinterpreted some of the model. What began as a way to start better conversations turned into a race for activity. Meetings booked became the headline metric, even when the real goal was always meaningful engagement. Today, we're revisiting that journey with the man who started it all, the legendary Aaron Ross, author of Predictable Revenue and From Impossible to Inevitable. And of course, I have with me Adem Manderovic, the co-founder of CRO School and creator of Closed Circuit Selling. We're going to dive into how Outbound has evolved, what lessons still hold true, and how a new wave of GTM leaders is expanding on the foundation from measuring meetings to validating markets and from frameworks to full commercial architectures. Aaron, thank you so much for joining us to talk about what comes next.
Yeah. Hey guys, happy to be here. And by here, I mean, virtually.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And Adem,
Yeah.
thank you so much for joining us too.
A good intro, especially, observing how people have misinterpreted so much of the book over the years.
Well, that's something that we definitely want to get into, Aaron. Maybe we can start then with when you first published Predictable Revenue. I mean, first of all, did you get a sense that it was going to be the framework that still defines, I think, Outbound 15 years later?
Yeah, I knew it was a great book in the sense of the ideas to be really, I thought it'd be a popular book or it deserved to be. Just so in some sense, yes, but in other ways, no, I didn't know, and who knows where things go. I will say kind of the intention I had with writing the book and like what it would kind of the impact it would have on people. Like I said, it's gotten, I can see why people kind of associate it so closely with just like outbound prospecting. That really wasn't the point of the book in a lot of ways. And I still feel like I've only done 1% of what I'm going to do. Like it was a good book, but it's not like, okay, this is like the best work. It's like, okay, sales is not my passion, funny enough. And I'm actually surprised at how long it's lasted in a way.
How do you feel when you obviously pointed out with that intro how a lot of the market actually misconstrued your message behind the book and turned it into their perception, and that shaped the market, wherein a lot of people probably didn't have as deep an understanding for not being long enough themselves in the seat to actually understand what you were saying to articulate and actually facilitate that properly?
Yeah. I mean, somewhat since I don't really care. It's one of these things where, you can't be bothered because there's always going to be like, I could probably sit and there's some different archetypes, right? There's the archetype of the people who are just newer, right? They're younger. And when you're younger and you're, let's just say even 20s, I'm just making up a number. And you're like, oh, I have this thing like outbound is dead, right? Inbound is, so HubSpot did this in what, the late 20, like around 2010, 20 teens, right? HubSpot, right? Oh, inbound marketing, that is the answer. Like there's everyone, which makes sense. Everyone's like, I've got the solution, the new thing. I mean, everything else is going to be obsoleted. So inbound is it. And I'm thinking like, well, it's great, but at some point, everyone needs everything at some point. Nothing ever really dies, truly. So even or lately, like Adam Robinson is this popular LinkedIn influencer, and for a while, a couple of years, oh, the predictable revenue playbook is dead, and outbound is dead, and and then the next year he's like, oh wait, we're doing a lot with outbound by sending cold email. So it's one of these things where people do use a lot of either because they're kind of excited about their thing, and it's easy to de-emphasize other approaches, and like, oh, this is it, and that could be there's so many things that could be, or they're just being smart about marketing, which is they pick a contentious topic like this thing is dead, whether they believe it or not. I did that in the book. I said cold calling is dead. I mean, it's not dead; it's still alive and well. But I was just being a bit dramatic with it. So there's different reasons, but to me, ultimately, the book was really about creating a shared understanding between executives, managers, and salespeople around like how sales works, kind of the architecture of it. And the outbound was a big part of it because that's what I actually did at Salesforce. So kind of had the intimate understanding of it. But I never thought outbound. I didn't think it would do as well as it has over the years, honestly. And one more thing, 'cause the long answer is because no matter, there's this weird paradox where the more effective a technique is, then the more popular it gets, which means the less effective it gets. So I thought outbound would struggle, be a lot harder way before this. And then now I'm like, it's always going to be hard. There's always ways to make it work, or any channel, marketing, blogs, anything.
Did you have a sense, though, as it was happening in real time, that the misconception of what you've actually said in the book changed the measure to be meetings booked up and down, moving away from what you and I would traditionally say is like market validations, the right conversations, etc. And that kind of got emphasized, and even like through HubSpot, that became obviously the measure. And then that kind of curbed the tools, which curbed the behaviors, and then some of the commercial acumen that you and I would speak to kind of got washed out of the market. When you wrote that post last August and said, like, what was next? And I wrote back to you and wrote like a really long response, and you gave me a pretty good response yourself. I was just winding back to all the fundamentals that we were taught in APAC from between like 99 and 2008, which was kind of like business basics, where we would go out and would find out who's with who, what they like, what they don't like. And that would enable you to figure out if the category is defined. And then you
Yeah.
could also work out, you could sharpen the pencil to figure out if there'd be a market in terms of timing as well as the price. And then you could give that to marketing and say, marketing, could you build us this on their timing? And we'd have a fair chance of winning it. Right. But
Yeah.
that kind of model has
Yeah.
been kind of, people have literally put me in lunatic groups because they didn't understand that that was actually possible. But I'm like, that's actually the objective of the conversation. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's interesting. It's kind of
Well,
gone.
people are kind of funny, there's just this, I don't know if it's a loop or a roller coaster or the, because even Peter Drucker, I can't tell you which decade this was, but he's a legendary management guru, and he would come back and remind people, right? The point of the business is to basically, who are your right customers, or ask you the core questions. Who are your key customers? What are the problems you're solving? And it's probably like a third question. And so what happens, there's this natural, and I do this too, like we all do this, like there's something new and you get excited. It could be a new product, a new campaign, a new thing, a new this, that, and the other. And you're like, oh, let's push this. And you kind of, at some point you push it far enough, you kind of get off track around who the customer is. Either because it's something new, right? I have a bunch of new books, I have a bunch of new stuff. I might be excited about, creating this new book. I got books in different topics, right? There's, career reinvention and sales. And so I'm excited to do this book. And then I have to kind of remind myself, which is I've gone far enough. Like, who again am I speaking to? And so I think it's not wrong. Like, we kind of have these ebbs and flows on excitement over some direction we go, but then we have to come back to what are we trying to accomplish? And I don't think you can do both always at the same time. So I think you're right. It's especially in a very exciting, new, shiny object syndrome world, more than
Mm.
ever, it's like we have to remember, like, okay, what are we trying to do with our lives? What are we trying to do with our business? Who's the customer? What's the actual problem? And has that changed? Because the world's moving faster and faster. So the nature of the person, the problem, the pain, the message, and so on is more likely to change every few months than a few years.
It's interesting that with the explosion of the perception of your model and the measurements changing within the tools, that kind of washed out like the core fundamentals of the role, whether that's SDR, AE, business development, customer success, but it also kind of like hung marketing out to dry because it reduced marketing to be only a lead function. So they had to basically do lead gen to meet the contact target. So we had enough people to call that were never ever going to buy our stuff because you're only speaking to 3% of the buy now of the Chet Holmes pyramid, right? But the
Yeah.
market seemed to just eat it up, and that's kind of curved into that needing more tools to self-sustain hypothetical targets for that to happen. And that's kind of caused like a niche market where all what I'm seeing and what George and I are seeing, which is why we built the school, is that's kind of like washed out a layer of like leadership, C-suite, sales marketers that have never seen what good looks like outside of broken modeling, because they're still thinking in terms of how could they silo enhance their patch, not how they could architecturally solve an organizational problem.
Yep. Yeah, we're in this anxiety economy, and I wrote about this in the book. What happens is when there's anxiety, it kind of compresses, or stress, or too much stress. It compresses your kind of mental throughput, and you kind of revert towards, rather than the long-term durable solutions, which really are more like relationships. The longest term durable solutions tend to be like kind of fuzzy, squishy, like relationships and emotional intelligence and things you can't really get like a metric around. And your mind defaults towards, give me the tactic now, right? What's the framework? What's the metric? How many calls you're making? It's very short-term, fleeting solutions. And so I think there's a natural desire and demand for kind of like, give me the solution. It's like TikTok advice, right? The 10 seconds of, the little like wisdom flash, which means nothing. Like when something's not working, people's default is to do more of it, right? Someone's in my family, right? We had 10 kids, and one of the kids, or a lot of them, they don't feel like they're being heard, so they yell out, like they're yelling, and they realize the person's not hearing them, so they yell louder, right? Salesperson is not making, their calls aren't getting enough meetings. So what do they do? Or the manager tells them to do, make more calls. The exception are people who are like, you know what, this isn't working. Let's just take a moment, go back to the drawing board, and try to figure out what a better solution is. It's pretty rare, honestly, in my experience, and with people, not just in work.
We know that all too well.
Yeah,
Hey,
I mean,
George.
exactly. And so I'm kind of, in some sense, I'm like, I'm kind of over it. Like, there's so many, you can't help everybody, but I'm like, yeah, it's a big problem. I will say that the new book I'm working on, this sales book, is really more, to me, the future challenges are going to be not just, hey, what's the process? What's the framework? I feel like that's kind of old. AI will be able to give you any of that left brain stuff. And at the actual bottlenecks to figure out how to grow, how to lead your team, create predictable revenue is all going to be it's more the emotional intelligence layers, either in yourself, like that mental noise that we all have, or among the team when you've got more team friction. And to me, that's where the future of success is going to be, is all the squishy stuff.
We're obviously banking on the fact that what we've built with my pillars of closed circuit selling is all on the premise that the market is never not going to need to be not validated. Marketing is never not going to need to know timing in terms of being more commercially viable to build the stuff to get you where you want 3, 6, 9 months. Product's never not going to want to know live feedback groups from the market to build out for 12 to 24 months of where you need to get to. And customer success is never not going to want the communication plan to see if it's serviceable to take on the contract. But we've stemmed so far from all of these other broken sales methodologies, and I was the first one to obviously attack some people quite publicly in terms of how they'd qualify. It might be good in an isolated silo, and I know that a lot of the stuff I said with Keenan and Gap actually blew up pretty large. But my point with all of that is, it's really good after you've already got someone on the hook. But what happens architecturally first to get that validated market, to give that stuff to marketing so that you can actually win as an organization? And that seems to be lacking. There's no like commercial
because we don't have
acumen.
time to do that. We've got to do it
Yeah,
now.
yeah,
We
yeah,
don't have time
yeah,
to validate.
yeah,
And
yeah.
I'm being serious. Like I'm on, I'm on the board of a company, and the guy, I don't think I can share here. I'll flash up a picture, and I love the guy, but he's too busy to figure out, he's too overwhelmed to figure out what to do. So it's activity, not, it's like, where do we go? I don't know, just go. Right, well, you can go, it doesn't matter how fast you go if you're going in the wrong direction. I'll find this. It's like, I'm working on these funny cards. Show you an example. This is kind of, I don't know if you can see this. It says
Yeah.
artificial impatience. Is it backwards?
No, we got it.
No, we need to use AI. What exactly do you want it to do? Make us look like we're using AI.
So true.
Very good.
Yeah. I got another one that says flat out busy. And so it's a picture of a car with the tires that are flat. And there's an executive in the car yelling, go faster. And there's some people, workers in the back trying to push the car, right? And to me, this is the kind of stuff that, I've been using. I'm going to switch topics a little bit, but this is relevant, which is, to me, AI is, you're going to overgeneralize, but say take over a lot of the left brain stuff like playbooks and metrics and all the other things. We'll need human taste and creativity and so on. But I think a lot of people will have to depend more on the right brain stuff, which would be associated normally with creativity, intuition, relationships, taste, and those sorts of things. And I think it's going to lead us into a lot of different directions that we can't really predict. And hopefully it'll make work the way less boring. And so these cards are just something I've been doing for fun. But I think they're actually going to turn out into some like a business thing. They have a company, a friend of mine who wants to send them out as kind of like to do a deck of these funny cards and send them out to companies as like a gift, right? And then a conversation starter to get meetings.
Mhm.
So I think that's like creativity where it takes you into weird places you may not know, but it could lead you back towards actually creating more money.
I like that. I mean, obviously, as a marketer, I love that idea, Aaron. I think it's really, really cool. And yes, there's pressure on people to show activity, and there's also a great need, I think, to develop relationships, and that seems to be something you talk about too. And it's very important for us to go from cold to cool to build relationships. How do we build that in? Is there a way that we can build that into more of a system so we can equip our people on the front line with at least some methods, some tools, some ideas on, well, how do we use our right brain a little bit more to build those relationships with people?
Yeah, you could totally do that. I think because in the talks I've been doing now, one of the slides, it's really the idea that what's going to be durable in a very fast moving world. It's not your your email template. To me, really, my lens is again, the human side, relationships, creativity, intuition. And there's ways if you create, to me, relationships with systems, then you can create durable growth. And there's lots of ways to do that. One example could be when people do founder-led content, right? They're creating relationships at scale. Another one is just there's very few companies in the SaaS world that have a real system to create a system around customer referrals, which makes sense and partly my fault in the sense of you've got salespeople who are looking for new business, often usually separated from the customer success people who are looking after current customers. So you need more coordination between teams. And people are usually companies are so focused on new business and churn, they don't really think about referrals as a system. It's more like something salespeople should just do, or customer success should just do. So those are two examples where you can combine systems and relationships.
You think that that gets parked as well, Aaron, because of how they've been measured since the explosion from like 2014 of how the measurements kind of changed? Because like traditionally, as like you and I would have been measured way back in the day, business development was obviously measured on open opportunity to close rate. And that kind of went away when they split out the roles, and it kind of got a little bit bastardized into a territory that it shouldn't have been, because that washed out the ability to do things like validate the market up front, which I call cataloging in my system. But that enables you to speak, as you know, to a wider portion of the market, get live feedback loops. But also, if I couldn't help you, Aaron, on that call, after having permission to circle back and having something to show you, I might be able to put you in touch with someone that can. But that same cataloging process to be used as some of the seamless transition into customer success would also be used at the renewal process. But what we're finding is those pillars are skipped, therefore they don't have the data, therefore they don't know what to do, and it kind of just gets shelved. But also the second part of that is most SaaS companies don't actually know how customer success should be customer success because they've never seen a communication plan handover or a serviceability plan. Like we had someone in our cohort from a large data provider who was head of business development that had never seen a communication plan. One of the world's biggest companies. So if that is, yeah, if that's getting parked, then you can't really say, well, how is this happening? Well, it's pretty obvious why it's happening because they're not following the pillars.
Yeah. Well, I think if there's like one thing that most people want to avoid doing these days, which helps, it's just like have more conversations. And I'm not talking about sales conversations. I think
Mhm.
people forget, entrepreneurs, it's like just go talk to people, right? You can, it's almost so easy to do research online, research, which is important. You might be like
Mhm.
watching videos and analyzing, running now AI reports. Okay. But unless you're using that to ultimately talk to a person or engage with someone, it's like you can learn so much. And I think it's a combination where you can learn a lot from talking to someone, actually, ideally live in person, but could be Zoom. Could be for feedback, could just be to see learn something new you didn't expect. Plus, you also get this sense of we're social people. Not a shocker that as technology has grown, people's loneliness, depression, anxiety has grown as well. It's like so that's one way to help alleviate that too, is just go talk to people, right? But I think that's really a lot of the goal, is having that connection with people. Sometimes we get that confused with making money and fame and fortune. But okay, if not only can talking to people help you with your business, but then it's like, okay, you're super famous or you have tons of money, and then what do you do? People, it's like it's so hard for people to realize that money is a means to an end, not the means, not the end. And ultimately, I like talking to people, and whether in business or in life, like that's just one of multiple things which you'll want to do or should do, regardless of how much money you have or don't have. So why wait? So it's like we put all our lives on hold in the sense of like, oh, I have to do all these things now so I can do what later?
Yeah, yeah. And the advancement of those tools pretty much just take all of those people that are in those roles now away from the fundamentals that they should be doing.
Can be, yeah. It's like turn more levers, right? There's more machines, so there's more
Mhm,
machines to fiddle with, or more
mhm.
like online messages to send, and more go to market frameworks to arrange, and like so it's just easy to forget to talk to people, whether it's your team, customers, your friends, family, possible prospects, whether you call it validation. In From Impossible to Inevitable book, there's a section which is really like the 20 interviews. It's like for a lot of early stage companies, they forget to just go interview and talk to. You don't need a ton of them, but just go talk to people, right?
Mhm.
But I think too, it's just natural. A lot of people have a lot of conversational shyness for people they don't know, whether it's why people resist cold calling, which I understand. Been there, knocking on doors, just reaching out to people to have a chat. But we're wired to take the path of least resistance, and for most people, reaching out to people takes more. It's a path of higher short-term higher resistance than just emailing, messaging, or like fiddling with something.
From a marketing perspective, Aaron, because so many salespeople are caught up in that activity and having to meet their activity metrics, it seems like it's difficult, as we've discussed, for them to have those conversations on a one-to-one basis. And, beyond just building a relationship, finding out, for this current problem, like who do you use currently to solve it? What do you like about it? What don't you like about it? Sort of when is your contract up for timing? So you know when to come back to them. So if it's not an issue now, well, we know that we can come back to them, and maybe when their contract is up in a year's time. Sales, a lot of them don't have that opportunity to collect a lot of that information. And then I feel like all of a sudden the gun got pointed to marketing, and it became marketing's job to try and figure out who was in market and when. But marketing isn't out there having these one-to-one conversations, and we
That's not
kind of do
marketing. You
our
can't do
best.
that.
No,
Mm.
we're trying to do our best. They're buying tons from data platforms, and I feel like it's
Oh,
just splitting sales and marketing further apart,
wait, you
Aaron.
mean these intent platforms aren't going to be, give you everything you need? The blame game is a game as old as time, which is, it's not me, it's them, right? And then so I think that's a cultural thing with this is people, which is, it's just easy to play the victim, and so it's someone else's fault. Sales says it's
Mm.
marketing's fault, and marketing says it's sales fault, and round and round we go. So it's a cultural thing, which is, hey, look, we have a problem. Let's sit down and solve this thing together. Like, what are we trying to do? And I think
Mm.
one of the instructional solutions we've recommended, and this is I think more the impossible book, it wasn't in the predictable book, was if we have a CRO type of role, which normally should be the CEO. However, this is one of these things where you have to have a head of revenue. That's making sure if you have a head of revenue and a head of marketing and sales, whatever the titles, it only works really well when the head of revenue, which again normally would be the CEO actually, but they're hands-on enough and actually working, they're not over delegating to the heads of sales and marketing, right? So they're all working as a team. So because just having a CRO, or it could be the same thing, you have a CRO title and sales and marketing still arguing because CRO is a bit too hands off. It doesn't happen as much, you know. But I think that's where you need that teamwork, and you have someone and a team where you've got aligned incentives and someone who can kind of realize, hey, look, we're just trying to solve these problems together. It's not going to work if we keep blaming each other and complaining. And what are we trying to do? Going back to the basics. Who's the customer? Also, I think this is where you in the book's really focusing on what are the jobs to be done. So, I think a lot of people again take the predictable revenue book and like, oh, you need prospectors, inbound response, salespeople, and customer success, and like those are the jobs. Like those aren't the jobs. The principle is specialization. So whether you have humans or agents, it's kind of what are the jobs to be done, and what's the best way to divide up usually more types of jobs so people or agents can do fewer things better. Right. And so you might need to be creative with that. And like that's if you don't define those jobs well, I think that's a huge area of friction. Yeah, because we overestimate. People just can't do a lot of things really well. They just can't unless you're like a unicorn.
Do you feel that we're now at a point in time, Aaron, where the solve would simply be if sales went back to validating the market and getting those validations in terms
Hold
of
on, you
timing
lost me.
signals?
Hold on, the place you lost me was the solve would simply be
Mm.
simply. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, what we've found and what I've taught through all of the industries where I was a CRO is if sales were comped on validating the market to get timing signals, who they're with, who they're not, and if the category's defined, giving that to marketing. When I first started that, you'll laugh, was in a manila folder. We would write the company name and the months due, give that to marketing, like walk it over to them. Now we can send them a ticket or whatever, right? But if we give that to marketing, that enables them to be unlocked from lead gen and enables them to go back to doing the right type of educational drip that we would expect them to do. That also gives product what they need to, hey, Aaron, you're not there right now, but if you were to get here, here, and here, you could play in the same pen as us within 12 to 24 months. If we simply do that, we're actually solving that problem. But we're like, and also on the receiving end, you're now not being sold to from the get-go. You're actually just having a research call, which enables you to speak to a wider portion of the market. So in my eyes, that's always been the way that all of my teams have been able to win simply, but it's perhaps not so simple because when I came across George, I didn't even explain my first pillar. Possibly when I used to tag you and stuff maybe 5-6 years ago, you probably don't remember, but like I didn't even explain how to do the first pillar because I thought people would steal it.
The validation side.
Mm.
Yeah.
I literally just explained what I learned after getting market information, and I would do similar to your cool intro version of predictable revenue. We would find out how this actually worked. Is I was head of sales at Lease Plan, and I realized that all our RFPs were getting rejected. And I'm like, man, we're the biggest player with the best price with the best company in the world. How are we not winning these deals? So I went and read them. I reversed that into sales copy. I made that into an animated cartoon, got my BDMs to send it to people, and just literally call them up, Aaron, would it be okay to show you what we've found? And then just looked on their hidden links to see if the YouTube links went up, and then just called them back and asked them what they thought, which is obviously similar to sending people an email asking them what they thought, right? But that solved a lot of that problem between sales and marketing, but we don't see that very often because they're not allowed to do it because it's not how they're measured.
Yeah, it's kind of like the general work culture, management culture. That stuff trickles down. If you have a different manager, that's the culture that will change because they'll be focused on asking different questions. It's not so much like how many meetings did you get, it's what's getting in the way of getting meetings.
Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah.
I always think I gotta bring back in some book or something is, one of my iconic character back even when I had the Salesforce team was Columbo. If you don't know who this is, in the 70s, he was a very famous TV detective, Peter Falk. And his whole shtick was he acted really dumb, right? He's like, well, can you explain this to me? And by being very, ignorant, of course he's very smart, then people would just kind of overshare, overtalk, and he would just, have conversations. And they would lead towards, of course, getting answers and things. So rather than coming in hard and being overly confident and putting on this persona of like, rah, 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 just kind of being a bit disarming and, kind of a little bit more of like a lost lamb it's at the beginning of the conversation, right? And that let people kind of rather rather than putting their defenses up, they just end up being a little bit more engaging, and people like to help other people. So if you come off
Mhm.
kind of needing a bit of help, it works really well. Again, in the first phases of meeting someone in the conversation and kind of getting to know what the situation is.
Mm. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. There you have it, folks. Aaron's just validated that all my crazy methods make sense. No, I'm kidding.
Yes. And George's crazy methods make sense. Crazy too.
I'm just here to tell Adam he's crazy one day, then he's not the next day, and just keep him on the roller coaster, really.
Guessing.
That's right. That's right. Look, Adam and I have been really trying to beat the drum on this for the last, probably couple of years. It is challenging trying to communicate probably what is really like a return to the fundamentals, like building relationships, having conversations. It seems to be challenging doing that with the market. We keep like sort of facing these new challenges, whereas everyone's, as you said earlier, like people keep chasing the new shiny object, more automation, more AI. They just want the fix, that one thing. How do we get people to go back to just doing these fundamentals, to having those conversations? Like, do you see there being a shift there, or are people just always going to be chasing that shiny
No,
object?
most people are always going to be chasing this shiny object. I mean, we're all no different. We want the fix to help people focus on. We all want solutions. Everyone has problems, whether you're Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk has more problems than most, honestly. Doesn't matter how rich, successful, famous you. Everyone has problems. Everybody wants solutions. We all want fast solutions, right? Now, I think that there's a difference between wanting a quick solution and understanding may not happen that way, and be able to have some patience and some resilience around finding like a long-term or the right solution. So I think most of the people online are there because they're looking for the little quick hits of I want the framework, the solution, some sort of hack, and that will never change. That's never going to change. There's always going to be people who have gone through that and they're kind of like, oh, I've tried a bunch of things, that hasn't worked. I need something different. And so to me, I think if you are sticking to what are you trying to do, what feels right, you know, how can you kind of continue to hone your craft and be a bit more creative with it and trust that the people who are out there who are a good fit are going to find you. So whether you're broadcasting through LinkedIn or through again conversations or podcasts or creating apps or whatever you're creating, or like these cards I'm just doing for fun. But in my mind, I kind of knew my premise here in the future is if I do creative stuff that I'm having fun with or I think is really cool, and I'm not trying to make a business out of it. I'm not trying to make money from it. I'm just doing something I think is really fun and cool. Like some of that stuff will end up making me money or other people money. I'm not trying to see how A leads to B to C. I think one of the greatest ways you can block yourself is say, I need to make money or I need to get something. I have ideas, I create ideas, stuff I want to do, but I can only, if it's not going to make me money, I have to chop it off.
Mhm.
Right? But a lot of creative ideas, you don't know where they're going to go because you can't have an idea and have a linear like, oh, I'm having ideas and they're going to make me money. If they have ideas, they're kind of weird, they're kind of random. I got to play with them. And at some point down the line, I can't even say when, they're going to turn into something. But trying to control, it's like you choke them off too soon if you try to put them into a money bucket, a results bucket too quickly. By trying to put that kind of pressure on an idea that's too young, you actually kill the idea in the first place, its potential. So, I think this is, if I have to do this in my mind, sometimes a lot of these things will have to be created by example and have stories. And then people can go, oh, that's what you meant. Like for me, like the cards I'm working on a set of coffee brands. I'm working on this kind of letter writing kit, like writing handwritten letters, wax stamps, all just really cool stuff I love. And I'm doing books too. I'm doing other stuff. And this is where AI has really been helpful because it's unlocked a lot of stuff I couldn't do or be too hard to do otherwise. And like, I don't know exactly where they go, but I'm having fun doing them and they're really cool and other people think they're cool and it's going to they'll turn into something. I don't know what, and I'm not trying to put pressure on it to know, to generate a certain amount of revenue or be some certain model in it because it's not ready. And that's okay.
Do you think that that's maybe the reason the market doesn't look at these core fundamentals because of they just don't let it play out long enough to realize, hey, if we had these permissions to go back over these signals in time, we could actually win the long game easily with a less of a burn rate. but because they've got pressures to push that right now, they won't even look at those models.
Yeah, that's a lot of it. Yeah, and if you don't have the management culture to create that space, well, it's the management culture that puts the pressure.
Mm.
All right. So again, like you said, I have too many calls to make. I have too many. So if I'm too pressured, I can't. When I'm on with a customer, it's very hard for me to slow down to take that kind of investigative. I don't know the word you use, but kind of like I said, like the slower approach feels slower. The short term feels slower, and long term you get faster results. But I just need the answers. Like, do you have budget? Right. I end up in a mode that turns off the customer.
Sending out those creative cards, that kind of thing. I love that. And I feel like that kind of work, should sit in marketing's wheelhouse as well. At least they should be involved. That should be like the activities that we are good at helping sales to do too.
I mean, I think it's not marketing's job to come up with the ideas. That's too much. That's not realistic and it's impossible. But I think it's helping kind of poke people, prod people. If the CEO is not going to do it, it's like if the CEO is curmudgeonly, at least they should know. Okay, I need someone on my team to kind of encourage to be the people officer. If I'm not a people person, I need someone who can do that. If I don't feel creative, we can all be creative. If I don't feel it, I need someone to help poke people to be creative because that's what we need. When everyone is zigging, you need to be able to zag.
Mhm.
And so creativity is going to be, you didn't have to have it in the past. You didn't have to be a people person. You didn't have to, but it's going to be more likely you're going to need to develop more of these right brain areas in order to succeed. Because if you think about AI is really going to create kind of infinite copycatting, infinite noise, infinite overwhelm. It's like when everyone has superpowers, nobody does. So how are you going to differentiate yourself? Again, this is the way I think it should begin. The relationships, intuition, creativity. There's certain and taste, certain aspects of who we are. We can always do well, except corporate America generally kind of standardizes everybody in a way. And so it kind of represses a lot of those traits, a lot, not for everybody. So I think that AI is actually going to, interesting enough, like force people and companies to be more of themselves because if they can't be more of themselves, they're not going to be able to differentiate and not going to succeed. So and it creates like a forced life awakenings in people over the next, I don't know, 5 to 20 years, who knows?
I'm just going to jump in and say, Adam, I hope you heard Aaron saying that the creation of those cards and the sending them out, that's sales' job. Don't look at marketing, mate. I'm not doing it for you.
And see, it's like it's no, everybody's job. Yeah. That'd be changing my words
Yeah,
on me.
trust you to pick out that one thing.
Everyone needs to have whoever can have some crazy ideas, it should be encouraged.
But you're right. It's whoever's closest to the market who understands like that customer best is the one who's going to be best positioned to understand like what's a good creative way to do something that is going to get some cut through that they'll like, that will enable me to give without receiving. And it's really like whoever is closest to the customer can do that. And that is by and large sales, right? Because they're the ones who are out there every day on the
Hopefully
front
talk to
lines,
people.
speaking, hopefully, fingers crossed, talking to people.
Yeah, not just
should
messaging.
be.
Messaging has its place, but
Yeah.
going meeting, but yeah, I think like nothing ever dies. Like cold calling is not going to die, direct mail is not going to die, and inbound is not going to die, outbound is not going to die. It's a it's an overwhelming option ways that we can connect with people. And even if you're one salesperson with a prospect, you've got WhatsApp, text, email, IM, LinkedIn. And so sometimes you're like, I think there's this fair question, which is if you're a salesperson or a marketer, which is like, what do you just want to do? What would be really cool to do or interesting or unique and maybe kind of weird? And some people have ended up writing poems or songs. If you sometimes I haven't seen it for a while on LinkedIn, but some people do some cool weird stuff, and that's great. Have you seen people who've written songs that send to prospects?
Mhm.
So yeah,
Yep.
cards. It could be, or it could be a little video, audios. It could be. It doesn't have to be. It could be the way. There's so many ways you can express yourself. It could be the way you write a note. It could be audio. You guys have accents. You guys have funny accents. So you could use. So there's so many. And AI is really gonna enable so many creative ways because you could send messages with accents if you wanted to. I don't know. I'm just making this up. I couldn't even imagine the number of ways people will, if they kind of let themselves experiment, play with just reaching out to people in ways that they think would be what they would like to, they think would be different or interesting, and just to kind of experiment. Like there's not a lot of room for experimentation.
Perhaps the easiest way to unshackle marketing's foothold on what we can and can't do in large organizations anyway is for sales to go back to validation and handing that to marketing and enabling them to release some of that assistance.
Yeah, no, I agree. But especially bigger companies, they see sales too much as, you know, mission cogs, right? They just need to be out there getting deals, and they don't really appreciate the possibility of sales as being a communication channel, right? You've got
Mm-hmm.
people who are talking to customers, right? Actually having live conversations. Something that you can't do with surveys, you can't do with polls, and you can't do with market research shit. And they 100% do not take advantage of that learning and communication. I agree.
Yeah, that was always my point. And even people that have tried to take some of the early on when I was teaching them the process, Aaron, they tried to do everything they could except directly speak to the customers. They tried to build a cataloging question like they just tried to build it into a survey. And I'm like, they're going to email blast all these people. I'm like, bro, no one's going to read that. They're not
Oh
even
my
going to
God.
open it.
No,
Yeah, I'm like, just
that
pick up
makes
the
you're so
phone.
right. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
I'll give you an example. Is, you know, and I try to tell people do systematize your customer referrals. Don't send out emails to get referrals, and don't have some paid program. Like you need to have a way to get humans on your teams, whether they're success or sales, to go have phone calls with your customers and ask them for kind of
Mhm.
permission to get referrals, and then for specific referrals,
Yep.
not phone
So you
calls.
could do that, yeah, at the start of the validation process or at the customer success end. Like it's very simple. Like, would it be okay, Aaron, if I call you back? I've just realized that we're not the best customer for you, but I can see someone else would be. Play it forward there. But also at customer success, hey, if you've just put on the contract, just because we've blown you out of the water here today, Aaron, would there be anyone else within your network that might also benefit from what we have? That's an easy ask. But if they're not having those live conversations, they can't do it. But I've seen over the years of my 24 years of doing this version in many different verticals, they'll do everything except that live conversation.
It's kind of easier to think, oh, rather than talking to a person. I think this is the growing trend too. Rather than
Mhm.
talk to someone, I can just like type something up and get it. You know, AI is just going to make this worse, right? So to me, I think that's one thing that's going to remind people, if you want to succeed in life, there's a lot of, there's no like one thing, but one of them is like just go talk to people and keep talking to people, keep talking to people, and you can
That's
interpret. It's like a talking to people will kill 10 birds with one stone.
and even if it's a no, they're going to get better at that delivery.
Yeah, if it's a no, again, it's between like learning, getting information, what doesn't work, what does work. You get to connect with other people. You might make a friend, might get referrals, get out of it. You know, there's just so many reasons to keep talking to people.
So do you feel that with the explosion of all the tools in AI, Aaron, that I used to basically just write on every one of George's posts years ago, backwards to go forwards, like everything will go back to fundamentals at some point because it'll need to be real?
Yeah, I think it's just an ever evolving loop, right? We kind of two step forward, one step back, and like I said, sometimes we have something new. We're doing a new book, a new program, a new tool, and yeah, oh, let's push it. And I go, "Wait, where am I trying to go to with it? And let's
Mm.
push it. Where am I trying to go to? So I think that's just a natural way that humans work.
But it's interesting that there's not that many places that are teaching the fundamentals, because if you look at some of the responses over time for some of the stuff that we've put out there, people literally said that I was crazy for just teaching fundamentals across the funnel to bring organizational success.
Well, did they say you're crazy for that or for other reasons? So
Be both.
maybe you're conflating these a couple things.
George,
You're
no
not talking
answer.
you're not talking about your ex-wives or girlfriends, are you?
No,
Or
no, no,
boyfriends? I don't know,
not on the
mate. I don't know
podcast.
you.
That's his other podcast, Aaron.
Yeah,
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 exactly. Hey, you never meet
yeah.
these days.
Yeah, he's up to episode 600 of that, and it's a subscription
Oh
only.
wow.
That's just
Oh wow.
Aaron, I wanted to ask about your new book, Income Operating System. What made you kind of expand your work from, largely talking about organizational revenue to now personal income systems?
okay. Well, start back a little bit. There's a bunch of years, almost like 10 years, I really didn't want to write anything. I was kind of burned out on the books and writing. And that was also, I had like so many babies and kids, and we moved countries and had a business partner I didn't get along with. So the last few years, I kind of broke all that and was like, what do I really want to do? And I kind of came back to, well, first I had no idea. I still need to make money. I knew I had to figure out like what kind of work do I like to do that I would do if I didn't need to make money, would I still like to do? No idea. But it took me 2 or 3 years to figure out, oh, I really love books. Sales was a thing I kind of stumbled into, and I'm really interested in it. It's more of an engineering thing, and but I'm really interested in people and money and books. I love books. I'm a book person, so I'm working on a bunch of different books. And the income operating system book, really, because someone I knew, an old partner, came to me with that idea, and we're doing it together. So that's a great, he had a good, great idea. It's really the essence is, in a really overwhelming world, also a lot of bullshit online. Just reminding people, again, fundamentals. There's just three ways basically to make money. Three core ways. So you have employment, you've got freelancing, and you've got investments. We're trying to give people a bit of some simple techniques to kind of make the most of those three. I'm also now working on a new sales book, which I for a while say I'm not going to do another sales book, but the thing with AI and also the direction we're going with this book, we'll always need a new sales book, right? The world's never going to run out of new cookbooks, so we're never going to have like enough sales books. But for me, what I'm interested in doing is a different type of sales book, and so this one, the core idea is there's these three layers. And the top layer is like an iceberg, is the execution layer, which is like, what are we getting done with what metrics and tools? And that's where everyone kind of obsesses. But when you have problems, which people tend to ignore, is the middle layer, which is kind of team conflict or team friction. And then of course there's a million books on culture, but and then the bottom layer is mental noise, right? And that's we're in a world full of shiny object syndrome, compare and despair. And so what we see is that a lot of companies who are struggling on execution are really getting tripped up by this combination of team friction and mental noise. So they're not able to kind of like make effective decisions, or they see the forest for the trees for the forest, right? They're so caught up on like getting things done that they're doing the wrong things. And so we're not in this, we don't really have like a concrete solution. We kind of know where that book is going. And so, for example, one of the aspects of the modern team too, it's different, is that there's more anxiety in the world. And there's also more bigger cultural gaps between people in the workplace. So when I was at Salesforce, everyone was there kind of whatever, like Monday through Friday, 9 to 6. Some people you might have worked on weekends and stuff, but generally there's like a rhythm, and there's basically a shared set of corporate work values. And there were differences. You had the older, crusty people and the younger. So there's always those differences, but those differences are much bigger today because you got people growing up on social media. So the way that they think, the gap between a 20-year-old today and a 40-year-old is bigger today than it was when I was younger. And you've got virtual work and office work. You've got more bigger amplified differences in politics and different values and veganism and all this and LGBT, whatever. So there's more friction than ever. So what I'm seeing is that one of the solutions, for example, is something going to be around self-managing teams, because a lot of people in the workplace, they get anxious, but then they infect their anxiety. Anxiety is infectious, right? So you have an anxious investor and they're talking to the CEO, like, where are the numbers? Where's the pipeline? So the CEO goes to the VP of sales. Where's the numbers? Where's the pipeline? To the salesperson, I need to close these deals. To the customer, like, so anxiety is infecting and emotions are infectious. But when you have self-managing teams, the idea is it's a way to kind of force people to manage their own, anxiety, emotional states, rather than trying to like pass it on to other people and play the blame game. So there's a lot of stuff to work out. It's a very early in the process, but directionally, I'm very confident like that type of book, this type of book, which is really more on how can we redesign the way that people work so that you get better outputs on what you do, rather than just like do these things. Which that's where we're going with that.
Love that. It sounds very, very timely. I mean, Adam, given your experience in your leadership roles, I'm sure it's something that you would love to read as well, and probably would have loved to have read, 5, 10 years ago.
Yeah, before my hair started falling out, it would have been good, Aaron. No,
Yeah. Well, see, so the idea is going to be a post AI, when AI, you've got kind of basically infinite copycatting, noise channels, and everything else, and you're just having so you're like, okay, talk to AI, give me the tell me the playbook I need to run, give me the thing, how are you going to differentiate and succeed as a company? So that's where we're aiming for, is something that's not going to be obsolete in a couple of years.
I love it. So, Aaron, what then, I guess, gets you excited about the go to market, if there is any innovation there over the next 5 to 10 years? Is it this return to relationships that AI is forcing upon us? Is there something else?
Yeah, I mean, thing is, I thought the whole go-to-market space is really, at least for me, just not that interesting, kind of boring, because it was all basically the same for the last like 10 or 20 years. Just nothing wrong with that. There's always like stuff like, and I think AI has really changed. It's like, oh, there's enough of a change that's coming that like I'm interested in it again. And I mean, I'm just more having fun with creating I think is cool stuff, which I've never had before at work. I think I feel like I've done interesting things like at Salesforce. But a lot of the work that I've done is more obligatory because I kind of had to do it to support a family. And sometimes I liked it, and a lot of times I didn't. Didn't really feel like me as much. And now I'm like, oh, I feel like I'm on a really good track. And I'm really interested to see where things go. But I think it's mostly from the lens of like the projects I'm doing because, like kind of where the world goes. It's just too big a thing. But I'm like, how's this book going to develop? And it's really interested in like what works with people, like what are their actual problems, or like with these cards, like having fun like doing the cards and like really curious to see how they work in this first kind of meetings campaign with this company. So it's I'm really interested in more of like that very kind of things I can see and touch and people I'm talking to level. And I mean, I'm probably more anxious about where the world's going with AI. I don't, the people who are all I know, I'm old enough to have seen that the people who are saying, "Oh, well, AI, there's not, it's going to obsolete all the jobs. We'll have to have a universal income, and people will just have too much free time." Like people say that with every big technology change. That never happens. Just more bullshit work gets created to fill the gaps. So, but what they do is that it's like it widens the rich poor divide. So I think that is it going to be a huge, and it's already a huge problem. It's just even bigger problem in the future with AI, and both a financial gap, but it's also going to widen the emotional gap. So the people that grew up with like a stable family and educational opportunities and sort of encouragement are going to be able to do amazing things. And then people who grew up with terrible environments where they have no opportunity and they're just in all and just constantly discouraged or unstable families, it's just going to be even harder. So I think to me that is one of the greatest challenges. I mean, there's a lot of them. That's one of them. I think the AI will make even worse.
Certainly a lot to think about. Any additional closing thoughts of yours, Adam, before we leave Aaron? Aaron, you've been so incredibly generous with your time. Adam, anything else that you'd like to add in there before we round out the conversation?
we had some good conversations the previous week with Tony J. Hughes about AI, but none as deep as what you just uncovered there, mate.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like that needs to be a whole separate episode
Yeah.
with people than more expertise than me. That's for sure.
Well, it's the people who feel like technology is creating problems. So what's the solution? More technology. That's not really a thing. Or too technology focused, right? Technology is going to solve them now. But I would say so. To me, for people navigating this and everything is like going back to like the fundamentals. Close on this, which is in life. It's like what do you want to do with your life? What do you like to do? What and if you don't know, like if you could do anything, what would you do? What are you interested in? What were you curious about? Like these kinds of questions generally are kind of squeezed out of us in the Western kind of school and career. And I think that's why generally it's like there used to be a midlife crisis, around like 40s or 50s, people kind of had enough and like, oh, they kind of strip away the relationships that don't work, the work that doesn't work, and I think those will happen earlier because with the internet connectivity, I think there'll be people have midlife crises in their early life now, like I mean 20s and 30s, because there's just more opportunity for that. But I think what those do is what kind of life do you really want to live and for who to do what? And that's a fundamental thing. And if you can kind of tap into the sooner you can tap into that, I do think there's an incredible opportunity for AI with AI and because of AI and the new technologies to whether it's make money or to turn anything you're interested in doing into the results you also need and want. Like we all need money in some way. So think about all the people who are online who are making money from knitting. I don't know, like from cat videos or like if they can make money doing cat videos, if you whatever you figure out you're really interested in doing, could be funny cars, jokes. I know there's opportunities now that they didn't exist 5 or 20 years ago. And I think it'll be more successful that approach in the future, where before it was more optional, at least in making money. You always needed it to have some sort of fulfillment in life, but so again, I think to me that's
Like
why
it.
this kind of EQ, emotional intelligence, really is like the key to the future and how it combines with IQ and not the. And we need to kind of stop praying to the cult of IQ.
I like that. I think it's a beautiful place to close out on, Aaron. Thank you so much for joining us at the B2B Playbook with myself and Adam. It's been a real privilege to speak to you. Adam, as I said, like I'm a marketer. Adam has really taken me on this sales journey over the last couple of years, and he's just spoken so highly of you, gave me your book, forced me to read it, told me about what the market has done with it, what the original intention was as well. And yeah, to kind of come here and have this interview has been really wonderful for both Adam and I. So thank you for taking the time.
Yeah, I guess. Thanks. We have to get to chat this way, so good luck with things.
And sorry, finally, Aaron, one more thing. If people want to learn more about your other projects and what you're doing, where's the best place to direct them?
Great single place. LinkedIn, I think you have to know me. I would say that if you go to Aaron, it doesn't have my current stuff, but it's close enough and you can contact me, but aaron-ross.co. Not com, it's aaron-ross.co. Or Instagram, I'm aaronross383.
Yeah, absolutely. Follow Aaron on LinkedIn. We'll put the link to that site in the show notes as well and in the article that will complement this episode. Aaron, thank you so much for joining us. And Adam, thank you so much for joining us too.
Thanks.
Thanks, guys.